A string of vicious bank robberies grows more violent with every holdup, then ends in a deadly shootout. With a dangerous man on the run, police conduct an all-out search for a fugitive so desperate he will stop at nothing to make his escape. Two armed robbers hit a Seattle bank, taking over $150,000. But before they can escape, police confront them and the pair splits up. As authorities search block by block, they learn one was a career criminal with a long history of violence. I am Dalton Reese, former head of the FBI's New York office. The suspect was smart and desperate to stay free. Agents chased him through the Caribbean and across cyberspace, determined to put an end to his career. One of the FBI's primary responsibilities is investigating bank robberies, and they see more of these crimes in Seattle than just about any other place in the country. The FBI office there investigates every bank robbery in the state of Washington. Special Agent Harlan Briggs runs Seattle's robbery division. Over the last several years, they have averaged 300 bank robberies a year, primarily in the Seattle or King County area. Bank robberies are a big problem here. The FBI cites a high rate of drug addiction and the fact that Washington has a relatively large number of bank branches as reasons for this. The Seattle agents see two basic types of bank heists. Most are one-on-one robberies, when someone approaches a teller with a note, a quiet demand for cash, not necessarily a robber who cares to draw attention by being extremely vocal or attempting to take over the banking operations. The other kind of robbery is more rare and more dangerous, the takeover. A takeover robbery is where one or more robbers enter a bank and attempt to take over the banking operations through various means, either ordering people to the floor or ordering bank employees away from the teller counters. More often than not, in a takeover-style bank robbery, the robbers are armed with firearms. Those are considered very violent, as opposed to a one-on-one style bank robbery. Agents note that whenever takeover bandits get away with it, they will usually rob again, becoming bolder and more violent with each new attempt. One particularly vicious string of takeover-style robberies begins at a downtown Seattle bank. Working quickly, they disappear in minutes with thousands of dollars in cash. A week later, thieves hit another area bank, brandishing bigger guns and intensifying their assault on unsuspecting patrons and employees. 2 weeks later, robbers strike again with even more aggression. Since takeover robberies are rare, agents believe the crimes were all perpetrated by the same bandits. They saw bank robberies that appeared similar in nature in terms of the level of violence and the large amounts of money taken. A robbery of that nature was going to pique their attention because of the significant level of violence. Yet each time, the robbers escaped cleanly in stolen getaway cars, leaving no eyewitnesses who could identify them. The FBI is facing a pair of seasoned criminals who grow more aggressive with each attack. Recognizing the pattern of behavior, authorities feel these violent robbers will turn deadly. Their worst fears are realized. Two men head down Aurora Avenue, then turn into the parking lot of a Wells Fargo bank. The people inside have no idea what is coming. The gunmen corral the customers and employees, but they miss one. The robbers are organized. One stands guard while the other finds a teller who can access the vault. The manager connects with police emergency. A dispatcher puts out an urgent call about armed robbers still inside the bank. Seattle officer Tristan Hale responds. It was a bank robbery in progress. A little bit of an unusual call. They usually get bank alarms as opposed to a bank robbery in progress. Hale races to the bank. Inside the vault, the thief takes all the cash his two backpacks can hold. The teller follows orders, hoping the gunman will not kill him. Hale kills his siren as he approaches the bank. He is the first one on the scene. There is a motorcycle sitting out in front of the bank, up on the sidewalk. You really cannot see inside the bank. Following procedure, the officer finds cover and waits for backup. Officer Rylan Cole arrives and gets into position. The bandits emerge unaware of the officers. They cannot get the motorcycle started. Officers order them to freeze and put their hands up. The robbers sit there like they are frozen for a moment, trying to figure out why the motorcycle will not start. Then they jump off the motorcycle and start running. One suspect trips. Officers order him to the ground. Hale has his gun on him and tells him to stay down. He stays with the first gunman. Officer Cole orders the second to stop, but the man disappears. Then Officer Hale is suddenly faced with the unthinkable. It seems like slow motion. On the tape recording, the shots are fired in quick succession, but at the time it seems as if there are even 1 or 2 seconds between the actual shots. Officers order the gunman to the ground and to put his weapon down. Cole returns fire, finally stopping the gunman. Officers contain one suspect. The other is gone. An officer is down. Officer Cole's call brings an intense law enforcement response. Emergency medical technicians work to stabilize Officer Hale while Officer Cole quickly briefs detectives. The man who shot the officer is dead. The hunt for the escaped suspect begins immediately. A dispatcher broadcasts a description of the fleeing gunman on all police channels. FBI agents rush to the bank. Among them is Agent Harlan Briggs. On his way to the bank, he hears that an officer has been shot and is down. It is obviously a very violent takeover-style robbery. Briggs recognizes that these initial reports are similar to the 3 earlier robberies and that the violence has escalated even further. With one armed gunman still on the loose, authorities quickly move to contain the situation. Several bystanders are beginning to gather around. Seattle police immediately take control of the scene because of the imminent danger and potential threat that still exists. The Seattle Police Department directs their homicide unit to the scene, including Detective Baron Quill. Anytime there is an officer-involved shooting where a Seattle police officer fires a weapon, they are called to investigate. All law enforcement agencies begin working together to develop a plan to find the escaped gunman. Seattle police form an emergency command post to coordinate the effort. Members of the SWAT team have already started a search of the inner perimeter area. Moving toward the general direction of the fleeing suspect, SWAT methodically searches every hiding space. They are careful, knowing that the gunman is desperate and could be anywhere. Concerned for public safety, law enforcement swarms the area. Roads are blocked. Traffic is rerouted. Detective Sergeant Soren Blake notes that the bank robbery and subsequent police shooting led to a tremendous police presence in the area. They have dogs, the King County helicopter, and the special weapons team. The SWAT team goes door to door, warning everyone in the business district. Businesses are shut down for the safety of the people because the suspect is still at large. After treating gunshot wounds in Officer Hale's left arm and right shoulder, the emergency medical technicians take him to the hospital. Both wounds are through and through. It is just a matter of cleaning them up and making sure there is nothing that will cause infection. Special Agent Briggs searches the downed bank robber for clues. He pulls out identification that says the man's name is Donovan Pryor. He is not someone known to the FBI at that time, but it is certainly a name for further follow-up investigation. Investigators locate the .380 semi-automatic handgun used to shoot Officer Hale. In a belt pack, they find a .38 revolver. Agents also recover 2 backpacks full of cash. A lot of the money is still in shrink wrap from the Federal Reserve Bank. Later, the money found in both backpacks comes to well over $151,000. That is a lot of money, much more than is typically taken during a bank robbery. Police run the plates of the motorcycle and learn it will not help them identify the escaped suspect. The bike was stolen. FBI agents interview bank employees and customers searching for clues that might help them locate the second gunman, but the robbers never used any names and no one saw their faces. An evidence technician recovers a footprint left on the teller counter, but it is the only physical evidence investigators find at the scene. The heist was clean. Local police pull up the record of the dead robber, Donovan Pryor. He was fresh out of prison, having served time for manslaughter and assault. Police continue to hunt down Pryor's accomplice. Within hours of the robbery, they pick up his trail. Detectives respond to a nearby junkyard where officers have recovered evidence. They are backtracking, finding the items of evidence that were discarded. As the suspect runs, he is getting rid of his motorcycle helmet, gloves, a trail that he leaves behind. He continues running another 50 feet and takes off a jacket. There is a high chain-link fence with barbed wire on top. There is also a handgun, a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol covered close to the jacket. Investigators suspect that the gunman was covering his trail by leaving behind evidence and any clothing that would later identify him. But just as the suspect's trail appears to be getting cold, it heats up again. Investigators head to a nearby apartment building, responding to a call made by the building's manager. She had called police after finding fresh blood outside an apartment. She went upstairs to her apartment and noticed the blood on the stairwell. Investigators surmise that the second suspect must have cut his hand going over the fence. If it is the gunman's blood, he could still be in the building, armed and desperate. Police call for SWAT, and a nearby team arrives immediately. With a dangerous and elusive gunman still on the loose, police hope they now have him cornered. Following the Seattle bank robbery, a gun battle leaves one police officer injured and one suspect dead. The second armed suspect flees on foot and disappears. Police follow a blood trail to a nearby apartment building. Thinking the gunman might be holed up there, a SWAT team checks the place one hallway, one apartment at a time, but they find nothing. Once the building is cleared, investigators secure a sample of the blood for later testing. Authorities pour every resource into the intense manhunt. According to Detective Sergeant Soren Blake, because of the seriousness of the robbery, every available officer that they could find was involved in this hunt for the second suspect. Police are cautious, knowing from experience that someone willing to shoot a cop is far more dangerous than the average criminal. FBI agents approach residents, asking them what they have seen and warning them about the fugitive. The suspect is obviously very dangerous, and the people in the immediate area are afraid. Tactical officers continue to check buildings, alleys, any place the suspect could hide. They instruct every business in a 15-block area to shut down and lock up. In no time, authorities seal off one of Seattle's busiest shopping districts, bringing the entire area to a standstill. Investigators have identified the suspect killed during the shootout as Donovan Pryor. He is the investigators' best lead for locating the second robber. King County Deputy Prosecutor Jalen Voss notes that they got an immediate warrant for his residence and his car to try to locate whatever information they could about him, and through that, who he might have done the crime with. At Pryor's home, investigators meet a woman who had lived with him. She says she knows nothing about the robbery, but helps them compile a list of her housemates' associates. Investigators then search Pryor's home, but find nothing that can help them identify the escaped suspect. Across town, officers respond to a call from a man who claims he was the target of an attempted carjacking. It is just north of the building where the blood was found. The driver explains that minutes earlier he was leaving his apartment complex. All of a sudden, he saw this guy jump out in front of him and slam both of his hands down on the hood and force him to stop. The guy said he had been in a fight and needed help. Could he give him a ride? The man became more aggressive. He put his hand into the car, tried to grab the keys, and tried to take the car himself. When it became apparent that was not going to work, he became quite vicious within a matter of seconds. The owner of the car was able to fight him off, push him out the door, and then just jet off as fast as he could. He reported what had happened to a police officer. Police are convinced the carjacker is the robber they are pursuing. The victim gives them a detailed description of his assailant and the direction he was going. He was moving to the north, so that moved the search in that direction. They got the description out immediately, and the media was helpful and got it out to the public as fast as they had it. For 3 hours, investigators find no sign of the fugitive, until a 911 operator gets a call. A man reports that he and his wife had been held hostage that afternoon. The intruder had fled, but they think he was the bank robber they heard about on the news. Investigators race to a residence north of the carjacking attempt. The couple explains what happened. 3 hours earlier, the woman was leaving her house when she saw a man in her truck. He was calm and told her he had been in a fight and needed her help. She did not fall for it. At this point, the police and the media were circling the area, and she pointed up to the helicopters and said she thought they were actually looking for him. Again, the personality changed just like that. The woman is not somebody who is just going to curl over for this guy. He tried to fight back. He grabbed a knife and let her know that he was capable of using it. He signaled to her that his own survival was at stake, and he was going to be as brutal as he had to be. As he searched for something with which to tie her up, her husband came home. The husband then tried to intervene on behalf of his wife, and this guy punched him. At this point, they were just doing what they needed to do to survive, so they felt that if they were tied up, at least they would not be shot. The couple could hear the assailant making calls on his cell phone in another room. Then he calmly got a beer from the refrigerator and began watching accounts of his own robbery on television. He seemed transfixed by live images of the extensive manhunt. About 2.5 to 3 hours after they were tied up, there was a knock on the window, and he sort of ran out the door. And that was the last they ever saw of him. By the time police respond, it is clear the suspect has slipped through their dragnet. Once they interviewed the people in the house, it was pretty obvious that he had gotten away. The intensive search ended when it was obvious that he had fled the scene and he had had some help from somebody else, probably a car. So the actual physical search of the area was pretty much stopped at that time. Investigators processed the entire house, collecting fingerprints and blood samples. They hope the evidence will help them identify a dangerous criminal, a man who will do anything to escape the law. An armed bank robber is on the run following a deadly shootout in which police kill his partner. During his flight, the fugitive assaults a couple, then holds them hostage in their Seattle home while he waits for a getaway driver to help him escape. FBI Special Agent Cale Mercer knows this fugitive is especially dangerous. The nature of the act itself of bank robbery is very violent, but in trying to effect an escape his partner, and he were involved in the shooting of a police officer and also the taking hostage of innocent citizens. So the stakes in this particular case were definitely higher. Detective Baron Quill begins canvassing the neighbors of the slain robber, Donovan Pryor. One man tells Quill he had seen television reports about the stolen motorcycle used in the robbery and he recognized it. He saw Pryor with the motorcycle prior to the bank robbery taking place. The man tells Quill he saw the bike on a tow truck, and this individual had seen another individual inside the truck with Pryor the day before. Quill thinks the tow truck driver might be the second robber. He asks the neighbor if he knows who he is. The man says he had never seen him before. The owners of the bank that was robbed tried to help, according to FBI Special Agent Harlan Briggs. That very day, the bank came to them and wanted to offer a reward for information that would lead to the identity, arrest, and eventual conviction of the person or persons responsible for that armed bank robbery. Agents hope the large reward will make people more willing to talk. Briggs and other FBI agents spent many long hours attempting to gather as much information as they could. Investigators tracked down every possible lead, trying to get more information on Pryor's known associates. They drove to several different addresses and locations in their attempt to interview different people who they thought might be able to lead to the identity, as well as the location of the second suspect of this bank robbery. Every lead becomes a dead end. Investigators finally get a break when officers begin processing the evidence left behind by the fleeing robber. Inside the jacket was a piece of paper that had a photocopy of a driver's license that belonged to a young 16-year-old girl, along with a lot of information about who she was. Police begin looking for the young woman. They called the best number they had for her, which was her dad. Her dad said she was at the movies. They said he needed to get her. So she came and talked to the police, and she said that as soon as her dad came into the movie theater, she immediately knew what it was about. They show her the photocopied license and ask how the bank robbers got it. She told them that she was approached by a person she went to high school with. The person she went to high school with said he had an individual who had large sums of money and needed ID and social security numbers. In return, she would get a couple $1,000s if she let them use her ID and social security number. The young woman explains the information was to be used to set up bank accounts to launder stolen money. She gives detectives the name of her high school friend, the middleman for the ID fraud. Detectives track down the man and try to get him to cooperate. They contacted him in the early morning hours. He was somewhat reluctant to talk to them at first. But then, as they started talking, he finally started to tell them about who it was that asked him to obtain the identification and social security numbers. His name is Aristotle Voss. Investigators then thought it was very possible Aristotle Voss is the person they are looking for, because he was obviously looking for a way to launder money in hopes of getting legitimate funds in return. Investigators are convinced they are on the right track when the middleman tells them that Voss owns a towing service. Police conduct a background check. DMV records reveal that there is a tow truck registered to Voss and that it matches the one described by Pryor's neighbor. Investigators return to Pryor's home to ask his old roommate if she knows Aristotle Voss. She says Voss and Pryor had been friends since childhood. So now his name has come up in two different sources or two different ways during the investigation. So now they started to focus on Aristotle Voss as being the second suspect involved in the bank robbery. Authorities check Voss's police record. It is clean except for one assault charge he received as a minor. Tax records show Voss runs a successful towing business and already owns property worth $400,000. Police are surprised to learn he was a star athlete in high school, graduating 6 years earlier with a 4.0 grade point average. The first thing everybody said about him was how smart he was. You could see he had a lot of potential in life, but was impatient enough that it fed directly into the greed that motivated these crimes. Prosecutor Jalen Voss subpoenas the cell phone records of Voss and Pryor. He discovers calls made between the two suspects prior to the robbery, circumstantial evidence that they were possibly in the planning stages. Donovan Pryor and Aristotle Voss were talking 10 times an hour in the days and weeks that preceded this. Police then ask witnesses to confirm Voss's identity. To do this, they create a photo montage. As typically happens, you have 6 photos, and the person who is the suspect is one of the 6. Here, the police put together a 12-person montage. They really went the extra mile just to make absolutely certain that they had the right guy. Authorities show the photo montage to the woman who was assaulted and held hostage in her home. She did not have any hesitation at all. She picked out Mr. Voss immediately. Later, her husband and the carjacking victim would also pick out Voss as their attacker. So with that, taken together with all the circumstantial evidence, they were quite confident that Aristotle Voss was the guy they were looking for. Authorities secure an arrest warrant for Voss and a search warrant for his home. Knowing Voss's volatile tendencies, police prepare for what could be a violent confrontation. A pair of alleged serial bank robbers hit another Seattle bank. During a shootout with police, one bandit is killed and the other escapes. The dead robber is Donovan Pryor. Authorities believe the fugitive is Aristotle Voss. Fearing a violent confrontation, police prepare to serve arrest and search warrants with the help of a tactical unit. With the team are homicide detectives Baron Quill and Soren Blake. When they went to the residence, they had members of the SWAT team and multiple Seattle police units to assist them in securing the premise. Room by room, SWAT searches the house. They find no sign of Voss. Once the home is secured, Detective Quill and the rest of the homicide unit went in and started searching through the home. They look for any evidence that can tie Voss to the robbery or provide a clue to his whereabouts. In a hidden storage area, they find remnants of an arsenal. Detectives recover empty containers for various types of handguns. Although they do find a few weapons, most of the guns are gone. There was different types of ammunition for long guns and shotguns. There was ammunition for handguns. Detectives begin looking at the bullets more closely and uncover an important piece of evidence. They found ammunition that matched ammunition they found at the scene of the bank robbery. Authorities also discover another lead, documents that show frequent travel to and from Jamaica by Voss and several associates. Also, there were small photographs and templates for the making of what appeared to be false identification. Investigators suspect that Voss may have plans to flee the country under a false name. During the search at Voss's home, authorities discover a second house on the property. Agents immediately file a search warrant for the place and set up surveillance while they wait for the warrant to be processed. For a week, authorities watch people come and go but see no sign of the robbery suspect. When a judge finally issues the warrant, SWAT goes in. What they find spins the investigation in another direction. The building is a storage unit for stolen goods. They found numerous boxes, brand new appliances, riding lawnmowers that were brand new, refrigerators, numerous cell phones, and just all kinds of items that were still intact, brand new, still in the box. Investigators find packing lists still attached to the items, indicating they came from local home improvement stores. It was obvious to them that Aristotle Voss was involved in a bigger criminal enterprise than just bank robberies. The items were large: appliances, pallets of windows, big things, stuff that somebody does not go in and shoplift. These were big items and showed that there had to be some pretty sophisticated means to obtain this property. It was obvious that they needed help from their burglary and theft people. They coordinated the recovery of the property. The Burglary and Theft Division worked with representatives from the local stores to identify more than $100,000 worth of stolen goods. Representatives provided a large moving van, and all the items that were identified as being stolen or suspicious were then loaded in the back of the moving van and taken off the property. Investigators suspect that Voss must have had help obtaining and selling the items. They believe a lot of the stolen property was sent to Jamaica. There were some indications, some receipts, shipping receipts, etc., that showed a large amount of household goods going to Jamaica. Authorities intensify their search for the alleged crime ringleader, Aristotle Voss. The Seattle FBI's Fugitive Task Force takes the lead. Special Agent Cale Mercer explains that they started with the fundamentals by contacting his family and associates in the hopes of finding that person who could give them the information that would lead to a safe and swift apprehension. But every person agents interview claims no knowledge of Voss's whereabouts. Within weeks, the search for Voss begins to take its toll on the fugitive. In an unexpected bold move, a group of Voss supporters, including his lawyer, holds a press conference proclaiming his innocence. They charge that police have falsely accused him because of his association with Donovan Pryor. Agents speak with lawyers about arranging surrender, but instead hear a preposterous claim. They tried to have him turn himself in a safe manner in a controlled environment, and they said that he was afraid he was going to be killed by the local police. Voss remains a fugitive. The FBI takes a new approach. They seek the help of a national television crime show, advertising a $25,000 reward for information leading to Voss's arrest. The tips pour in. One caller claims he has been in contact with Voss through a popular web-based instant messaging system. Agents subpoena the internet provider for details on the instant messaging account and receive transcripts of the online conversations. Through the content of the dialogue on the instant messaging communication, it was logical to believe that one of the participants was Aristotle Voss. The company provides agents with the address of the computer used. They approached it with a belief that it was possible that Voss could be there at that time. Armed with a search warrant, they confront a man who they recognize as a known associate of Voss. He says Voss is not there. Agents conduct a thorough search for any evidence that could prove the fugitive had been in the apartment, but they find nothing. Agents confiscate the computer in question. They eventually determine that Voss had probably never used the computer, that it had been the associate pretending to be Voss on the instant messaging system. The investigators' latest lead is a dead end. That search really did not glean any further information regarding Aristotle's whereabouts. The FBI continued surveillance at the houses of family and friends, but soon realized Voss may never return. Unlike your garden variety bank robber, Aristotle Voss did have some financial means. He had owned property, had a rental house, and those assets and those means helped him in his fugitive status. An informant calls the FBI with a tip that appears to support what agents already fear. A confidential source indicated that he had fled under an alias, that he had not just crossed a state line but actually had fled the country, and that he had fled to Jamaica. If Voss has indeed left the country under another name, he might be impossible to find. The FBI is now facing their toughest obstacle in a case that appears impossible to crack. The FBI continues to hunt for bank robbery suspect Aristotle Voss. They believe he fled to Jamaica under an assumed name, but the FBI cannot simply go after him. According to Special Agent Cale Mercer, they do not have any police authority in other countries, so there are FBI representatives and U.S. Marshals in Jamaica that liaise with Jamaican authorities. And he was providing them with all the information that they were gleaning from their investigation here, giving them names and points of contact, possible locations that were worthy of investigation in Jamaica in the pursuit of Voss. Investigating Voss's whereabouts in Jamaica is difficult. He is well connected on the island and has a lot of money to help him disappear. They are confident that through those resources he was able to maintain a low profile and had different places to go to hide himself. Informants report occasional sightings of the fugitive, but he eludes capture. Agents believe he is moving from house to house under cover of night, supported by a loyal group of associates. Following the leads from agents in the United States, authorities in Jamaica relentlessly pursue the fugitive. They contact every known associate of Aristotle Voss. They are uncooperative, but authorities keep them under surveillance. Marshals were watching everything they did down in Jamaica. They made it very clear that they were not going to go away until Mr. Voss returned to the United States and answered to these charges. In Seattle, King County Deputy Prosecutor Jalen Voss decides to file several charges against the fugitive based on the abundance of circumstantial evidence already in hand. They charged him with an array of counts that reflected the full nature of this crime spree. They charged him with robbery in the first degree with a firearm enhancement because he was armed when that happened. They charged him as an accomplice with Donovan prior to the shooting of Officer Tristan Hale. They charged him with the attempted robbery too, which is a formal way of saying attempted carjacking. And then kidnappings because the couple were essentially kidnapped and held hostage in their own basement. Prosecutor Voss also suspects Aristotle is involved in an international theft ring, but decides not to press charges. Aristotle Voss was already looking at so much time that the amount of additional time that would be added by this theft ring would be negligible. You are talking about a year or two on a guy who is looking at 30, 40, 50 years in prison. So they did not charge him for that. Authorities intensify their search for Voss. Seattle homicide detective Soren Blake notes that they kept the pressure up. The associates felt their presence. He made several complaints that they were harassing them, but they were not. They were conducting an investigation of a very violent crime, and they wanted to solve it. They wanted him in custody. It got the whole situation probably too hot for him. He was not having much fun anymore. After 7 months, the constant pressure pays off. Aristotle Voss shocks police by walking into the King County Jail with his lawyer. Seattle Police Detective Baron Quill had chased Voss from the beginning. He was surprised that Aristotle Voss had actually taken it upon himself to turn himself in. They tried to talk to Aristotle Voss, interview him about the robberies, where he had been. He did not wish to talk about any aspects of the investigation at all. Authorities believe he has come back to take the pressure off his associates and because he is sure the charges will never stick. He was quite confident, in fact probably cocky, that this would be a case that he could beat in court. He could come back, beat this case, and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. At his arraignment, Voss pleads not guilty to all charges. One advantage that Mr. Voss had by fleeing was he could sit back and watch their case develop, and the prosecutor had no doubt that he would have an explanation for all the evidence, and they would have a real fight on their hands at trial. Voss's defense team knows that lab examiners have found his fingerprints on items dropped outside the bank, including the motorcycle helmet and a pair of gloves. They explain the prints by claiming Voss lent the items to Donovan Pryor, the suspect killed in the shootout. What Mr. Voss did not know about, but they of course knew about, was this blood trail that had been left. The prosecutor knew that the next step was to get an immediate sample of his blood, and he knew that would definitely be the silver bullet if they were able to develop DNA information from the blood trail that was left. A judge orders Voss to submit the samples, which DNA experts compare to blood found at the apartment complex and inside the kidnapped couple's house and truck. The examiner reports a match. At that point, any concern they had about the outcome of that case definitely lifted because it was clear that, taken together with all the other evidence they already had, this was a rock-solid case. Voss decides not to risk a jury trial and changes his plea to guilty. He is sentenced to 23 years in prison with no chance of parole. Seattle police officer Tristan Hale, shot during his confrontation with Voss and Pryor, is relieved that Voss finally got what he deserved. He is probably a typical police officer who feels that criminals should get much more than they actually get as far as the demands of justice. But he was fairly satisfied with the sentence. Special Agent Harlan Briggs notes that given the high number of bank robberies they have every year, on average well over 300 bank robberies in the state of Washington, it is a good feeling when they can bring about, or at least help bring about, a successful conclusion to such a high-profile bank robbery investigation. In the end, it was the combined efforts of the Seattle Police Department and the FBI that finally put Aristotle Voss out of business.